Memory cage. The close combat weapon flashed, slicing through the sandstorm. A Type 40 combat sword, a state-of-the-art weapon issued only to the elite forces of the front lines. The blade, cracking with electricity, burst and sent a semi-spherical object flying through the air in an arc. A now decapitated machine stopped moving. A few seconds later, a cylindrical body fell on its side in the sand and exploded, shrapnel showering 2 previous destroyed bodies in the vicinity. After the explosion and the shockwave, all that was left was the unique sound of the sirocco, the desert wind. The dust eventually lifted, revealing a human silhouette. From the smooth outline of the shoulders, the tight waist, and alluring legs that emerged from a short skirt, the silhouette clearly belonged to an adult woman. Though technically, the individual wasn't an adult or a woman. The silhouette didn't belong to a human or an organism within its gender. It was Yorha Android Type B No. 2, codename 2B, a unit built for battle. It had already been a long time since humans had left the Earth. Humanity was forced to flee to the moon because of the alien invasion. As of now, Earth was only occupied by the machines, which were the aliens' minions, and the human-created androids, who were assigned to destroy the machines. 2B sheathed her sword as she called out behind her. "Was that all?" Responding to her question, a support unit called Pod, that had been floating several feet over her, lowered itself closer to the ground. It had a cuboid head with 4 variously sized arms. While it generally traveled through air, it could also propel itself through water. It had multifarious support functions, including long-range attacks, situational analysis, transmission capabilities, and emergency battlefield first aid. Affirmative. No enemy response is detected within a 5-kilometer radius of the access point. I see. To be mumbled as she approached a middle box slightly taller than she was. Access points were disguised as ancient human vending machines, but there were valuable apertures that enabled transmission with command and collected intel on their surroundings. Whether they were aware of it or not, the machines always gathered around these access points. Whether it be in the corner of a ruin or in the middle of a desert, without fail they collected around the vending machines as if they were insects swarming to a fallen fruit. Inevitably, Yorha squad members needing to send a transmission or check the terrain data of the surroundings had to clear out the machines around an access point. It was just standard operating procedure. After completing this step, 2B could finally attend to her original errand. She opened her mailbox on the display and retrieved a newly received email. She read the sender, the classification of top secret, and some of the message when 2B! Suddenly, appearing out of nowhere was Type S number 9, aka 9S. While he was a Yorha android, he wasn't modeled after an adult woman like 2B, but instead a teenage boy. Is that a mail from command? It wasn't as though he had looked, but scannotypes like him that specialized in research had exceptional observation skills and intuition. It wasn't time for the regular report from the human board on the moon to come, and she surely wouldn't have engaged many machines just to open a personal message. He had probably taken those factors into account, and instantaneously arrived at the conclusion that it was mail from command. It has nothing to do with this research mission. It's some directives for another mission. Anyway, to be changed the subject, this isn't the rendezvous point. The assigned rendezvous point with 9S was closer to their mission destination. I know, but it seemed like you were in battle, so I thought I'd come in as support. No need to worry about me. If she hadn't been able to take care of the machines, she would be a dysfunctional Type B. I guess. 9S dropped his shoulders with an exaggerated motion. Well, since we were able to meet up, let's continue on together. After consulting the map data, 2B and 9S started to head toward their mission destination. More sand got in. It would have been remarkable had water gotten into their shoes as they walked the desert. But sand was to be expected, and 2B thought it was nothing to make a fuss about. On the other hand, 9S would scowl every few meters, walk a short distance, groan in frustration, and go through the same cycle over and over. Doesn't it bother you, 2B? What? Aren't your shoes full of sand as well? Well, it's uncomfortable. It doesn't disturb my walking, so... Sandstorms in the air obstructed vision, but sands in their shoes was no problem. Just don't worry about it, said 2B, at which 9S dropped his shoulders yet again. Having sand in your shoes feels disgusting, doesn't it? It doesn't disturb my walking, but it's a matter of sanity. We are prohibited from experiencing emotion. How many times has she said the same thing to 9S? This wasn't the first time she had gone on a mission with him. Roger. 9S' reply was the same every time, made with a slightly sour tone and expression. Well, of course the first time he had been apologetic and said, sorry, but still. She had heard that the Aura androids were prohibited from experiencing emotion ever since a squadron member had jeopardized a mission because of them. Indeed, emotion impaired judgment and action. To be thought that emotion was unnecessary for androids, especially for herself. Oh, is that it? Ahead, in the direction NS was pointing, a building jutted out of the horizon. The building had been displayed on the map data all along, but the topological variation of the terrain and sandstorms had concealed it until now. Affirmative. The main subject of this research mission. A massive building, remnant of human civilization. Pod answered from the side. It wasn't 2B's particular model, Pod 042, but 9S's, Pod 153. A pod would usually only interact with its support targets, unless it was specifically called upon or in a tough situation. The wind suddenly weakened, and the field of vision became clear. They could see an arched entrance on the face of the building. They could tell that the building was dug into a mountain. But looking at the map data, not all of the building was built into the mountain. Some parts of it faced out into the valley. Overall, it was built very strangely. It was apparently a religious facility called a temple. Its official name was the Sand Temple, I think. Humans used to live here a long time ago, and after that it was used as a temple. I heard. Perhaps she was imagining things, but 9S sounded excited. Since the role of Type S was to inform research and gather data, they had the trait of being exceptionally curious. Let's get going, 2B, 9S said impatiently, and started running as he kicked up sand. That must have gotten more sand in his shoes than before, but he didn't seem to care. It had evidently been a matter of mind. 2B felt a smile creeping up onto her lips, and quickly suppressed the urge. Emotion is prohibited. She had planned to say it internally, but ended up accidentally saying it out loud. 9S looked back and shouted, Did you say something? Nothing, 2B answered as she hurried toward the sand temple. There's no sound, she thought. That's how quiet the interior of the temple was. She realized with a delay that it was because of the thick walls of the temple blocked out the sound of the desert winds, which outside still persisted. I didn't expect this place to have air conditioning, Pod 153 responded to 9S. Negative. There's no air conditioning unit near the entrance of the building. The body's perceiving a lower temperature because of the temperature differential between the desert and the interior of the building. Boo! It feels like it. 9S sogged as he trotted along the hallway. 2B was wary of the surroundings as she followed. The footsteps and the low humming of the pods overlapped. A part of the ceiling had collapsed, and rays of natural light poured down. The light let them see the stairs and floor, which was packed with rows of square blocks of stone. There's even sand in this building! 9S put his hand on the stair railing and looked down over it. The stairway was completely coated with sand. Sand not only filled the hallways, but there were small piles of sand next to the walls as well. Hypothesis. The sand in the hallways and near the walls was intentionally circulated by humans. However, the date of occurrence and motive are unknown. Intentionally circulated? You mean they poured the sand into the temple? Like a river? Affirmative. For convenience sake, we will call it artificial quicksand. Why would they do something like that? Oh, did you say the motive was unknown? Affirmative. There were many mysteries from ancient civilization. While humans had fled to the moon, they hadn't taken all their belongings. That's why androids performed research and kept records. Are there any machines nearby? She didn't see any enemy responses on her goggles, but 2B asked Pod 042 just in case. It was better to be safe than sorry. Answer: there's no enemy presence in the temple. That meant that even if 9S A ball of curiosity did something sporadic, they wouldn't be in immediate danger. Of course, there were some machines that could jam their sensors, so they weren't completely off the hook.
Warning! The stairs and a part of the floor ahead are damaged.
9S laughed in response to 153's warning. I know, you don't have to tell me. Right, 2B? 2B nodded. She could see a huge boulder blocking the descending staircase by the entrance. This boulder used to be part of the ceiling. The surface is worn down, but I can see some patterns on it. 9S, who was kneeling on one knee inspecting the boulder, glanced up at the ceiling. Seeing that, 2B also looked up. She could see the sky through a gaping hole. I wonder why it collapsed. At the very least, it wasn't the aftermath of a machine battle. The androids were created to return to Earth, to its rightful human owners. So when they thought, they tried to use methods that wouldn't put human artifacts in danger. That's why it was hard to believe that a battle would take place so close to such a large artifact at this building. If, hypothetically, androids had encountered machines, they would have lured them to a different place before engaging in battle.
Answer. The collapse is estimated to have happened thousands of years ago. Therefore, the cause is indeterminate.
Thousands of years ago, huh? Amazing. Amazing? Well, if the ceiling collapsed thousands of years ago, that must mean the temple was built even earlier than that. It's amazing that this building is in such a good condition. Since the desert winds are so harsh, I would have expected more erosion to take place, especially for a stone structure like this. 9S, who had said all that in one breath, suddenly stood up. As if he were being sucked in, he quickly headed toward the room next to the staircase. What's next? To be asked, a little irritated. 9S was inspecting the open door. I wonder how they opened and closed this door. It's stone, you know. This thickness and size. It's not something humans would be able to easily move. The sliding door consisted of 2 panels, but neither would budge no matter how they pushed or pulled. 9S tilted his head to the side as he stared at the partition. Maybe there's a power source somewhere? 9S peered inside the room, but in contrast to the hallway, which was lit by natural light from above, the room was pitch black and seemed to extend forever. Pod 153 blocked 9S as he attempted to enter the dark room.
Recommendation. Illumination area.
Okay, that's perfect. Roger. What lay illuminated in 153's light was surprisingly a large space. 9S ran after 153 toward the middle of the room. The entrance grew dark again. After instructing 042 to illuminate the way, 2B also stepped into the room. 9S inspected the ceiling and the walls. As she moved, his shoes made squeaks that echoed throughout the room. Then he suddenly crouched down to inspect the tiles on the floor. Just watching 9S made 2B dizzy. The floor, walls, and ceiling were all made by stacking stones. They cut them uniformly, laid them out. This architectural style is different from any other one I've seen. I wonder what kind of equipment they used. How did they carry that much heavy material? How does such a thin pillar support a room this tall and wide? 9S rushed toward a portion of the wall, talking with fascination in his voice. Did there used to be a light here? On this thin table?
Affirmative. There is evidence that torches, a type of illumination, used to be placed here.
1, 2, 3, 4. There's 8 of them. I wonder what they used this room for. It doesn't seem like it served a ritualistic purpose. After running around excessively, 9S headed toward a door in the back. The door at the entrance was open, but this door was closed. I doubt it. 9S placed his hand on the handle. What if this door easily opens? Yeah, right, 9S said, drowned out by a creaking sound. The door slid open from both sides. It opened? 9S looked surprised as he looked at the open door. Pod 153 kept the light on as it went through the door and then came back. Checking the surroundings for any danger was also a duty of a support unit.
Warning. The hallway is significantly below the door's height.
But 153's warning could not deter the Type S curiosity. I'm going to go look a little. I'll be back right away. After 9S let go, the door closed behind him. 2B sighed after 9S and 153 disappeared from sight. This was her chance. Pod program, activate close combat support and weaponry.
Roger. Electronic signal camouflage activated. Close combat attacks activated.
Pod 042 went through the procedures.
Combat mode changed to anti-Yorha. Personal identification signal erased.
Her heart was heavy as she thought of what she had to do. In order to settle herself down, Toby stood still as she drew her sword. It was part of her assignment. It was a mission in the category of top secret. She'd received a notification for a new mail right after she exited her flight unit. Not on the bunker in orbit, or after they had entered the stratosphere. Pod 042 notified her right as they landed in the desert. She knew right away what this subject was. A message directly from the commander, not sent through an operator. Sent when it was least likely to be intercepted, above top secret. No, she knew far before she received the message. She knew when she was assigned to a human civilization research mission with 9S. She was sure she would have to assassinate 9S in the near future. Her prediction had unfortunately now come true. Pod, give me 9S location and a route to approach him through this hallway.
Roger. 9S black box response targeted. Calculating best route.
Toby stood with her back to the door that 9S and 153 had gone through. It was better to hunt him using a different route. It would be easier to run into him than chase him. Furthermore, the target was a Type S, a new model that specialized in research and data collection. She had to be cautious, or else she might lose the element of surprise. Of course, she had much higher battle capabilities. The result would be the same, regardless of whether or not she surprised him. But she wanted to be done with her task as quick as possible, before 9S realized he was being attacked. That way she could spare him some fear and pain.
Calculation complete,
042 said, as Toby retraced her steps through the hallway she had passed. She leapt onto the boulder that was blocking the staircase, and jumped. 9S black box response was much closer now. This time she carefully crept down the stairs, trying not to make a sound. The black box response was coming from the next room. She quietly drew her sword and approached the door. Just like the first room, these double doors were wide open as well, but she couldn't see 9S. She got closer to the door and quickly scanned around. The room was empty, which meant there was nowhere to hide as well. She wondered if she should enter. Toby felt a presence behind her. She quickly dove to the side and evaded a shower of bullets that rained down right where she had been standing. She recognized it as a long-range attack from a pod program. She tried to right herself, but saw a blade coming toward her. 9S had come up behind her and was swinging his close combat longsword. Toby didn't expect to be attacked by 9S himself. To think she tried to ambush him, but had been ambushed herself. Right as she was about to kick 9S' sword hand, she realized something. Why was 9S holding his close combat weapon? 9S never gripped his sword by the handle like this. She quickly created some distance between them. She saw the sword, now molten, leaf dripping like wax on the ground. Had she kicked his hand a moment ago, her right leg would have suffered a lot of damage. 9S must have predicted what a Type B close combat specialist would do in that situation, and set a trap for her. It was better to go elsewhere. She was at a disadvantage in the hallway, because she'd come in after 9S and didn't know what lay ahead. Taking a big leap backward, she created even more distance between her and 9S and jumped through a door. This was another room, not the one in which 9S black box response was detected. He probably wouldn't have had the time to set a trap in this room. 9S chased after 2B. There was nowhere to hide, but 9S went after her with no hesitation. Pod 153 fired long-range attacks while he attacked from close range. 2B was shocked at 9S' relentless style of fighting. She had never seen him like this. Dodging 153's gunfire and heat beams, 2B swung her sword at 9S. But 9S was more nimble than she had expected, and she couldn't deal a decisive blow. No, it was Pod's long-range attacks that were hindering her. She needed to deal with 153 somehow, so she called out to 042. Pod, set your attack target to 153. Support units had no relentless attack mode. If they were dealt damage, they always chose to evade further attacks, which meant that 153 would temporarily suspend long-range attacks while it was evading. It gave 2B 1 or 2 seconds, which was enough. The barrage of gunshots paused for a moment. To be immediately closed the distance between her and 9S. Perhaps he had not expected 153 to be attacked, because he just stood still. She pointed her sword at 9S and stepped forward. Just when she thought it was over, she felt a bad feeling run through her body. Her sword dropped from her hands. 2B's eyes widened in surprise. Or they tried to, but couldn't even muster that. Her arms, legs, and the rest of her body were all unresponsive. She could see the floor tiling approach her. No, she was just falling forward. Right before she hit the ground, she heard 9S say, "I'm sorry." So it wasn't just me, 9S mumbled, but it wasn't vocalized. In the hacking dimension, talking was just recorded in 9S personal data. The white walls and floor were also only things that 9S personal data perceived, since they didn't actually exist. He'd hoped it wasn't true, that 2B was plotting to kill him, but he saw evidence in her word selection, fleeting expressions, and her tone that supported his suspicion. Eventually, that suspicion turned into certainty, and certainty into reality. I didn't really want to do this. It wasn't a lie. He was telling the truth. He just couldn't think of any other way. He had tried to think of an alternative ever since he realized that 2B was an overseer sent by command. But he couldn't think of a realistic plan. But a Type S could never beat a Type B. He was well aware of 2B's battle capabilities, given all the times they had been assigned together. If he couldn't hack her castles and take control, he would be killed without a doubt. Since 2B rarely let her guard down, he had to wait for the moment 2B would finish him off in a close combat battle. A predator was most vulnerable when it was capturing its prey. It was something 9S had learned by observing the animals on Earth. On the other hand, his plan only worked because 2B was seriously trying to kill him. If she hadn't intended to kill him, she would not have been provoked into entering hacking range, no matter the ferocity of 9S attacks. The fact that 9S was still alive was proof of 2B's murderous intent. Either way, it's a bad excuse, isn't it? He knew that he was doing something worse than murder. He was infiltrating 2B's mind, rummaging through it, and on top of that, planned to kill her afterward. He knew, but still. There's something I needed to know. 9S carefully proceeded through 2B's memory block. He hadn't hacked her just to take control of her castles and kill her. He wanted some information. As such, we order you to assassinate 9S. One of the newer memories in the memory block was something that looked like part of an email. It was most likely that the email had received previously at the access point. Incomplete memories were stored in order of impact, instead of being stored sequentially. When 2B had opened the email, the words, "As such, we order you to assassinate 9S, were the first words she saw, which meant that 2B had expected to receive the order. She must have read those words first, because she had been expecting them all along. We have evidence. Attended to. The subject matter. Access the main server. An unresolved problem for some time. Several times. It is prohibited. 9S is... The shards of the memory were all over the place. The order of the words was out of place, because 2B had been rattled by the message. Furthermore, 9S had appeared while she was reading it. She hadn't had time to organize all the information in the message. 9S moved further into the memory block, looking for the information he needed. Is this it? A confidential meeting between 2B and the commander? It consisted of the commander standing with her back to 2B as 2B looked on. Apparently, this didn't take place through a transmission, but somewhere within the bunker. But isn't a Type S on-site research mission usually completed solo? It's just a formality. There can be exceptions. What if the area is infested with large number of machines? There needs to be someone to support the Type S, who's unsuited for battle. Roger that. Then I'll proceed as you wish. For now, just supervision is fine. I'll tell you what further actions to take later. This was a memory from before 2B started accompanying 9S on his missions. But at this point, he shouldn't have done anything prohibited. But the commander thought supervision was necessary. Why? Then, all of a sudden, another memory concerning 9S interrupted this one. For us scanner types, solo missions are the norm. That's why I think it's really exciting to have someone with me. He remembered this. He had said this on their first mission together. Toby had probably thought about the meeting he was talking to her then. Back then, he hadn't realized Toby was supervising him, let alone known that there would be further actions taken against him. Brushing his bitter feelings aside, he moved to the next memory. It seemed like it was a transmission, and he heard the commander's voice with static mixed in. Type 9S are specialized in research and data collection. Because of their proficiency, they always end up knowing too much. I guess you could say it's fate for a Type S. What's wrong with knowing too much? 9S thought. Was there something Command needed to hide? 9S will eventually commit a prohibited action. Perhaps he's already crossed the line. He couldn't disagree with this. He had attempted to access the prohibited main server. There's no evidence yet, but it seems like there was an unauthorized attempt to access the server. This time, whoever it was failed. But next time. That was right. He had failed first. He'd fled from an aggressive firewall. He had escaped quickly, so he shouldn't have left any traces. This time he gave up after passing one firewall. The next time he passed several firewalls. The more firewalls he passed, the more time it took for him to escape. There was a greater risk of getting caught. It might have been only a matter of time before he was caught, but he still wanted to know. The closer he got, the more he wanted it. If there was something he didn't know, he had to know. Indeed, this was a Type S's fate. The commander was right in saying that, and continuing to supervise him. Even her order to assassinate him might have been justified. The next memory was of yet another room of the bunker. This time, it captured the commander from the front rather than the back. Type S are unsuited for battle. I doubt I'll have trouble dealing with him. They are unsuited for close combat, but it's not like they can't fight. And Type S are sharp. There's a high possibility that he's already aware that Command has sent someone to supervise him. It doesn't seem that he's aware. You aren't suited for observation, just like how Type S are unsuited for battle. The commander was also correct here. Toby hadn't realized that 9S knew about her real role. At first, he thought Toby was just pretending not to have realized, but that doubt soon escaped him. Toby was not that shrewd. In fact, she was quite inept. The glimpses of kindness and concern. Maybe Toby thought she was hiding them well, but they were easy for a Type S to discern. Either way, if we attack him, 9S will undoubtedly counterattack, using hacking, which is a Type S's specialty. How sharp. 9S wanted to applaud her. The commander's prediction had come precisely true. Now he had half of his answers. Toby needed to kill him because he knew too much. Now, where could he find the other half? Let 9S go ahead and activate my weaponry then. I try to ambush him when we run into each other. A random memory shot interrupted the conversation between the commander and Toby. If it's over quickly. This was clearly an older memory captured through the conversation. Toby had been thinking of how to kill 9S long before the order came to do so. Don't let 9S realize what happened to him. That way, I'll spare him some fear and pain. Now he had all the answers. I see, he thought as the random memory disappeared. Even you, a close combat specialist, would not stand a chance if 9S hacked and took control of your castles. That's why. What? What did she make Toby do? The ambush was not an order from the commander. What did the commander make her do? I want you to set a trap in the hacking dimension. He felt uneasy. Suddenly, black walls appeared on the previously white hacking dimension. Orange and purple balls of light chased 9S as he turned. It was a trap-style logic virus. They could effectively attack 9S personal data if they set up some viruses in the memory block. However, the virus would affect 2B as well. 9S hadn't expected them to go this far. Shit, I underestimated them. It had been more of a desire for 9S, not a prediction. The commander had mercilessly chosen to put 2B in danger. He needed to escape before his personal data was infected. But logic virus attacks might not be enough. That's why we are going to set one more trap. Where was the escape route? He had made sure there was a way out. We'll block everything off. and trap him in the logic circuit. All of a sudden he couldn't move. Spheres kept multiplying within the dimension. It was a firewall created by a self-shutdown algorithm. "Pod, create a new escape route!" But Pod did not reply. Not only had the logic virus attacked 9S personal data, it had also cut off any communication with the outside world. His escape route was gone. In a few seconds, his current personal data would be purged and cease to exist. 9S looked on as the white hacking dimension's environment became a sea of black. I guess it's over. 2B had received the assassination order at the desert access point. Since then, she had countless chances to assassinate 9S. The desert, which had no places to hide and bad footing, but 2B had an advantage. But 2B didn't make her move until they were inside the temple. Looking inside her memories, he understood why. 2B was very adept after all. It was to end it as quickly as possible, so 9S could die without realizing what had happened. The spheres filled in his surroundings, but he strangely felt at peace. He didn't feel fear or pain. Bye, 2B. Then darkness overtook him. Control of her body came back just as fast as it had been taken from her. Self-shutdown activated. Logic circuit blocked off. Quarantined. After blinking a few times to check for control of her body, she slowly sat up. There were no problems with her motor capabilities either. Delete. She hadn't felt anything, not even a slight pain, like the prick of a needle. She just knew that the command had been executed. She looked down at her side, at the cases of 9S. While his black box response was still active, deleting his personal data had left his cases non-functional. It would have been fine had she finished him off in combat. Even if she failed to do so, the rigged logic virus would attack his personal data. Even if 9S succeeded in eliminating the logic virus, the self-shutdown sequence would trap him in the logic circuit. Then the whole circuit could be disposed of. The whole ploy had been constructed by the commander. 9S had thought 2 steps ahead by hacking 2B after close combat, but the commander had thought 3 steps ahead. It was her win. 2B held her sword with a backhand grip, and swung once. Head destroyed. She felt a strange sensation in her arm. She had never experienced this before. Even though this wasn't the first time she had killed a comrade, she had never felt something like this when she had relieved her comrades on the battlefield countless times before. Was her assassination not thorough enough? Chest destroyed. She thrust her sword one more time. This was strange. The sensation was spreading. At first it had only affected her arm. Now the pressure had spread to her whole upper body. She wasn't being physically suppressed, but it was hard for her to breathe. Black box response confirmed to be unresponsive. She had completely destroyed the cases. Her personal data was erased as well. 9S was dead. Her task was complete, but she felt like she had missed something. A nagging feeling of helplessness. Perhaps a breathing mechanism was experiencing some sort of issue. Bye, 2B. She replayed 9S' parting words in her head. His last words, stored in her memories. She realized what had been bothering her, what had been nagging at her in the back of her mind. I see. So this is... It was an emotion called guilt, or perhaps self-condemnation. Either way, emotions were prohibited. Something resurfaced when she tried to kill her emotions. They were memories of 9S. 2B, he called. It's exciting to operate alongside someone else. She remembered the bashful smile as he had told her that. What mission was that, when he sounded irritated and had said, 2B, you can be surprisingly careless sometimes. She felt a lump in the back of her throat. She felt her chest tightened like she was being strangled. She just kept gritting her teeth. She understood for the first time what it felt like for a living to be tormented by memories of the dead. This was her fault. She had accumulated more memories than was necessary. Bye, 2B. Again. The same voice. Again. She vigorously shook her head and brushed away 9S' thoughts. I won't apologize. It was a mission. She had no guilt. Never. If she got the same order, she would do it again. That's my job, she told herself and raised her head. Pod, a transmission to command.
Roger.
Pod brought up the transmission display. She was going to do the same thing again, that was for sure. But the next time, she was going to keep unnecessary interactions to a minimum. She was going to minimize their time spent together and their conversations, so she wouldn't accumulate unnecessary memories, so she wouldn't have any prohibited emotions. This is command. She took a deep breath one more time and exhaled, clearing her chest of all the pain. This is 2B. The mission is complete. Traces of something like grains of sand were sprinkled in her otherwise indifferent tone.